So the Prime Minister today is proposing a shake-up of education in England, which would give more weight to technical subjects, which would help young people into work. Secondary school pupils around the age of 14 or from the age of 14 would be able to study things like construction or manufacturing or AI. The Prime Minister saying he wants skill learning to be put on an equal footing with academic education.
We've had a system built for too long around the university route, and it sends a message to some young people that they're some kind of second-class citizens, and it's just not right. They need an education system that works for them as well.
As I said, this proposal would come in from year 10, 14 years old. You'd be able to combine some of those core traditional subjects with the likes of something like construction, and also try and get you work experience with local employers. The overall aim here is to try to reduce the number of NEETs. Those are people not in education, employment or training. That number recently has hit 1 million. Unions have broadly welcomed the idea. They do say more detail is needed. Let's get the view of a former Conservative Education Secretary, Justine Greening, also founder of the Purpose Coalition that works to drive stronger social mobility. Great to talk to you, Justine. What do you make of the Prime Minister's plans today?
I'm broadly supportive. I think if you live in a country where we've got loads of great opportunities that are open there for people to take them if they've got the skills, but then nearly 1 million young people not in education, employment or training, something's gone wrong with the system. And certainly this announcement today by Andy Burnham, of course we need more details on it, but I'm broadly supportive of it because I think it simply continues a direction of travel we've already seen in education, which has really, really mattered to lots of young people. I introduced the apprenticeship levy when I was Education Secretary. I announced the introduction of T-levels as well. And I think this is an important next step of how we make sure the education system works for every child. Every young person wants a path forward that is different, works particularly for young people who just aren't interested necessarily in an academic route and a more traditional one of going to university, but also crucially works for the economy. We absolutely need to put growth into the economy. And you talked about my work through the Purpose Coalition. I work with lots of amazing businesses that have fantastic careers, but actually it's sometimes quite hard for them to find young people who want to go into them, not because they're not great, it's just the young people don't understand what the opportunity looks like. So I've always been a passionate believer in making employers much more part of the education system. I might argue actually that Burnham should have gone further. I think employers should be involved in the curriculum review we've got on GCSEs. I still think that we fundamentally say there's vocational education and then there's academic education. I would argue that all education ultimately needs to be pointing young people in a direction of employment. And so employers need to be involved in shaping not just perhaps this new 14 to 16-year-old curriculum, but all of the curriculum. I think the final thing probably for the Prime Minister to really think about, and if it was me, obsess over, is of course how we can have this next stage of reform in education close gaps rather than open them up. And I particularly think you can learn from some of the challenges of T-levels as they've been rolled out. For example, young people in rural areas physically find it harder to get to some of those work placements that are really important. I grew up in Rotherham. I've always said, I've never met a lawyer or a solicitor, Steve, so I never thought about going into those particular sorts of careers. Making sure that there is really great practical advice for young people, when they get to secondary school, not even waiting till 14, helping them understand what different opportunities are. The sooner we can do that with young people, the better. And I think all of it tells you perhaps a final really important point, which is employers are crucial here.
I guess there's... Sorry, Justine. Please continue.
And yet the Starmer government raised national insurance. That made it harder for them to employ everyone, but especially young people. But I think we don't really incentivise employers to get involved with any of this stuff. And so you need to see a broader reform that really rewards and recognises employers who are part of the solution. And I think that's the piece for me, that if we can get that right, then you've got all the incentives pointing in the right direction.
You did mention policies that you introduced, and under successive education secretaries, why do you think that the number of NEETs is reaching this 1 million level? It seems that nothing seems to quite stick. Why would this be any different?
Well, I think we'd see needs steadily creep down. I think that's partly because more young people are going to university. And I think what's happened is almost this break and disruption of education, which was COVID. And then you're also starting to see a disruption, not just to an education pathway, but to an employment pathway, which is AI, and the fact that employers around the country are having to think, well, what does this technology mean for me? How can I make myself more efficient? What's it mean for my products and services that I offer? So I think we've got a generation that's been particularly affected by both of those things, disrupted education and now disrupted employment pathways. So it's incumbent on all of us, whether you're in employment or whether you're in education, to really think through how can we make sure that that pathway stays for young people, and how can we make sure that employers get the skills they need to keep succeeding, but that young people really have that much better sense much earlier of the workplace, what's going to be needed from them, and the fact that actually, there are lots of great opportunities out there, lots of fantastic careers. They just need to know a bit more about them so they can get inspired, fired up, and get the momentum that they want in their education.
And finally, Justine, as somebody who has dealt with the unions and has dealt with teachers in your role as Education Secretary, how willing do you think teachers and head teachers are to actually change? Because this is a major change. This is breaking from something that is quite traditional.
I actually think there'll be a lot of appetite to work on this. I think teachers, probably more than any of us, can see day to day that we've got a one-size-fits-all education system that we steadily changed at higher ages, if you like, for more young people, but that strategy needs to be woven throughout the education system. So I hope that everybody can be open-minded around working through what will be some tricky details as you get these reforms right, how you roll them out, all of that. It will need employers to really work collaboratively with government. And yes, the education profession will also need to be part of that. And they're essential because they understand how children learn. They are the education experts. So I think bringing those groups together is how you're really going to make a success from this. But we've had vocational education for a long time in the UK. This is just about elevating it to that next level. And we shouldn't underestimate the fact that if you're in further education, for example, we've seen just how much investment we've needed to put in behind T-levels. So actually this will change the profile of how we invest in our schools as well. And those are the things that you need to get right. But you absolutely, if there's a will, there's a way. You absolutely can work your way through those challenges, and I think create a much stronger version of an employment, education and employment pathway for millions of young people across our country.
Justine, I'm guessing you're going to be keeping a very close eye on this to come. Justine Greening is the former Conservative Education Secretary and the founder, as I said, of the Purpose Coalition. The time is 11:50.
Where the news never stops. LBC News.
Let's talk about